administrator is going to say that this hangout on there is live. And the topic of this, and of course I see typos in my title, is the 7 habits of a rockstar developer. It's not 7 habits, it's 19 habits of a rockstar developer. So what are the 19 habits of a rockstar developer? Well, I'm going to tell you. I'm Scott Nimrod, and these are my 19 habits for being a rockstar developer, okay? So I'm going to embed this video into my blog post, present to everybody. And my blog post is somewhere over here. The 19 habits of I gotta make a capital H. The 19 habits of a rockstar developer. All right, you want to know what it is? This is my pick. The 19 habits of a rockstar developer are, and it's probably, this is bizmonger.wordpress.com. I'm going to publish this after I make this video, but it's probably easier to go to my Word document. The 19 habits of a rockstar developer. I basically organized it into 3 different categories: lifestyle, engineering, and coding, okay? So the 19 habits of a rockstar developer in regards to lifestyle is 9 of them, 9 bullet items, right? The 9 habits in regards to the lifestyle of a rockstar developer. Number 1, a rockstar developer routinely reviews the latest Stack Overflow content. So what does that mean? Well, I'll tell you. I used to do this consistently, and then I kind of stopped, but I'm trying to start back on again, where in the morning, where most people have their coffee and they look at the news, well, I used to, in the morning, I would go to Stack Overflow, and I just got 5 points somewhere. And they gave me 5 points for, looks like asking a question. Yeah. In the morning, I go to Stack Overflow, and whatever programming language or library or framework or whatever topic that I'm interested in, that I either want to master or, well, 9 times out of 10 is that I want to master, right? Regardless of if I'm expert at that subject area or if I'm novice, what I usually do, or what I try to do, is every morning, just like when people look at their morning news, I look at my morning Stack Overflow, and I usually, lately, I go to the F# tag, and I look at the questions that people have been posting, and I'll just browse the different questions, like how can I use a command line argument as the argument for a type provider? And another question is F# pattern matching on discriminated union containing records. And I'll just browse the questions. Some of the questions are really interesting, that I never even considered before. Other questions I actually may know the answer to. And this is a way or a routine that, one, is very healthy. It keeps me up to date with what other people are working on. It also keeps me up to date with the solutions that these experts are advising, where it gives me an opportunity to say, oh, look at this solution. Look at the code snippet that this person provided that's answering this question. Yo, what is this function? Oh, this is supported in F# core library. Oh man, let me go to MSDN and let me get some more documentation on what this function is actually doing. Like it pretty much opens up a rabbit hole for me to just dig into and really explore. So In regards to lifestyle, if I go back to my 19 habits of a rockstar developer under the category or the bucket of lifestyle, number one is routinely reviews the latest Stack Overflow content. And this is how rockstar developers can, well, stay at the top of their game and really be up to date with the latest techniques of solving problems. All right. Number two, listens to software development podcasts, shows, should I say. They listen to software development podcast shows. And this also includes like YouTube videos as well, or any type of video content. So what I usually do is on I think it's Tuesday. It's almost like at midnight on Tuesday, which is like Tuesday morning. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I religiously, whether it's at midnight or like 6 o'clock in the morning, I religiously go to .netrocks.com and I listen to, I can't remember the names, but I listen to Richard and Carl, and they have usually domain experts on frameworks and libraries and programming languages and open source projects. And they have guests talk about specific topics that isn't necessarily .NET, but just software development in general. I mean, they're not going to have anything on like Java, but they usually have a lot of content on .NET and just web development and mobile development in general. And this is how I stay up to date. This is how I'm aware. This is how I stay aware of what's going on in the industry and what technologies are starting to bubble up to the forefront. And this is, well, what I leverage in combination to Stack Overflow to be aware and know just enough to be dangerous about potential techniques or solutions to problems that people need help with. So that's listens to software development podcast. That was number two. I can tell this is going to be a long video. So what else is in the lifestyle category of what makes rockstar developers? Number three is maintains I feel like my grammar is off. Maintains a technical journal. Okay. So I think it's very important for people that are serious about their profession, regardless of if it's software development, even if it's medicine or law or culinary or fashion, whatever it is. Like, if you're really serious about your craft, if you're a practitioner of your profession, then, well, if I Google you, the first 2 or 3 pages should scream what you're professional at. So when I say maintain a technical journal, well, yeah, I think it's very healthy for people that are in charge of their careers to, well, document their understanding of various topics that they're exploring, that they're learning about. And so, a technical journal, aka blog, whatever you want to call it. And this doesn't necessarily have to be like a blog, right? This could be a YouTube channel. It could be a podcast, whatever. But rockstar developers, they usually document their understanding, whether it's for them or to help others. And so that's number three when it comes to the lifestyle of a rockstar developer. Number four is recognizes the value of job hopping. What does that mean? Well, I'm a consultant, and it's you know maybe when I start like pumping out babies and doing that whole little rock star dad, family dad thing, I I find it very, I just can't see myself just being a lifer at a company unless I build that company myself. And so there's advantages to being a contractor or a consultant. There's advantages to job hopping. One major advantage is, you could give yourself a raise every 6 months if you choose to, or every 12 months. You give yourself a fat little raise, and you're going to reach your salary cap a lot faster than people that are giving, you know, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years of their life to some company. What they may get like 1%, 2%, 3% raises each year. 3% I think is a lot. But I mean, it's going to take them forever to reach their salary cap. But as a consultant or a contractor, when you start job hopping, you just give yourself a raise. And they ask you how much you want, like, yo, I want 20%. Well, I don't 20. I've done that before. You say, I want 10% more than what I'm making right now. And I mean, you don't tell them what you were making in the past. You just tell them what your price is. So that's the benefit of job hopping. Another benefit of job hopping is the fact that hopefully you're job hopping and you're working across different sectors of the industry or just industries in general. And so you are basically visiting different software shops and learning different techniques from the rockstar developers at those shops that you had no clue was even possible. You never even considered it, right? You're picking up knowledge as you go through this journey of being a consultant or contractor, and you're picking up, these nifty tricks from other developers that that if you were some lifer at some arbitrary 9 to 5 company, you would never ever know about the different ways that you can solve a problem, the different ways that you can skin a cat, the different tools or techniques that people are using that makes software development just, well, easier to manage, easier to do. So I recommend job hopping, man. You make more money that way, and you learn a lot more. And I mean, the time we have on this earth is limited, so why not go full throttle and get as much experience as you can and make as much money as you can? You know, we're all businesses, and we happen to help other businesses as well. So that was number 4 of lifestyle is job hopping. Number 5 is presents at user groups. So basically, you could go to meetup.com and you'll find like a plethora of different software user groups. Here in Miami or here in South Florida, we have like the South Florida Xamarin user group. We have the South Florida Test Automation user group. We have .NET Miami. I'm sure we have some database user groups down here. And I mean, this is going to be in every major city. I mean, I've put in work in Cleveland. I put in work in Tampa. I put in work in Manila, Philippines. I put in work in Miami. I put in work in Pittsburgh. Like any major city, they're going to have a user group. And I think it's enough to just go to a user group and just sit in the seat and listen to someone else speak. But I think that what makes a rockstar developer is they schedule time to, even if it's once a year or even quarterly, they schedule time to give back and to if even you don't even have to be advanced. You just have to be a step ahead of anybody else. And well, kindly ask the organizer of that user group if you can present on a certain subject, and just give back. Believe it or not, you know more than what most people know in a certain subject area. And so, we all tend to focus on certain things. And well, what makes a rockstar developer? One of the things that they do is they give back and they help others. And one way of doing that is presenting at a user group. So, number six, when it comes to the lifestyle of being a rockstar developer, right, is I have maintains a library of software development books, right? I could probably word this a different way. Um, I could say has a personal library of development books, software development, but this could be personal development as well. So I have a presidential library of software development books and self-help books. So like if I go to my Kindle, come here, Kindle, and like I got 67 books right here. And I mean, the majority of these books are software related. Some of these books that I have are on other parts of of being a human on this earth and things that you need to master, such as money and physical or sexual attraction and other things that are very important to basically have a fulfilled life. But the majority, probably 90% of these books are like, look, I mean, I bought this book. I think last week I bought this book, Machine Learning, um, REST API design. I got hella F sharp books. Release is a really good book. Building cloud apps. Xamarin book I got some books I haven't even read yet, such as Haskell. Game coding. Man, I got books on testing. And I got the Geek Leaders Handbook, which, well, that's a sample. I didn't buy that one. But basically, Rockstar developers, man, they have a presidential library of development books, whether it's software development or self improvement. And so, I mean, yo, this how do I go here? This is a presidential library, man. Look at this. Presidential, right? So that's personal library software development books. That's still under the lifestyle category. For number 7, makes an annual pilgrimage to a conference. So this one I think this one belongs. It may not. It doesn't have to be annual, but I think Rockstar developers, like if it's true that you're the average of the 5 people that you surround yourself with, then perhaps that could be translated as the quality of your character is who you choose to associate with, who you choose to rub elbows with. And so I think it makes sense that, someone that is serious about their career and someone that is serious about leveling up, that they go to places where they may just be considered average. And what I mean by that is you may be a rock star, at the company that you work at the shop that you work at. but there's going to be a handful of people at a conference that are going to be your peers, or they may be, steps ahead of you. And that's something that I think would be very healthy, is to go to a conference, seek out some people, maybe the speakers, have some questions prepared for the speakers at a conference. When lunchtime comes, or the next day, the next morning comes, like, say hello, yo, I really appreciated your talk, especially when you were talking about this, that, and the other. And, I was just curious, like, what are your thoughts on, blah, 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 blah? Because, I was really taking your talk into consideration. And, I just had that one thing that was like just annoying me when I was trying to go to sleep last night. And I'm just curious, like what were you really thinking? Like what are your thoughts about this specifically in this particular scenario? And, basically it just gives you an opportunity to chop it up with people that are just as serious as you are when it comes to owning their career and helping others advance to build the best software possible for companies that are in desperate need of our help. So what else? I have number 8, works on an open source project. And like, this doesn't have to be a popular open source project. I mean, honestly, I don't work on any open source projects that are like mainstream. I just say, oh, I have a pet project. I'm putting it on GitHub, and I'm going to routinely work on this, even if it's like maybe 3 hours out the week. This is going to be my pet project. I'm going to experiment with some ideas. I'm going to screw up some things, and I'm going to document my understanding and my journey. And so, one habit of a rockstar developer is they're going to be involved with a project, whether it's a project that is famous, that's popular, that is well known, or it's just something that they're just tinkering around with. But the whole point is they're practicing outside of work. They're learning outside of work, so that when the client needs their help, and money is being put on the table, that they've already learned from their mistakes of their pet projects, and they're actually leveraging that muscle memory to really deliver within a timely fashion the support that a client needs, so that they can save a lot of money or make a lot of money to help others. So yeah, work on an open source project, get that practice in outside of work, so when it comes time to perform and money's on the table, we walk on water. What else? For number 9 of the lifestyle category, I have seeks out mentors. And so this is potentially related to the pilgrimage of software development conferences that I have over here as number 7. Um, a habit of a rockstar developer is seeking out mentors. There's always going to be someone more advanced than you are, even if it's in a different area of your profession or of your field. So I think that I think this universe has a funny way of helping us. Whatever we put our attention on, and we become vocal about it, and we put in some effort to advertise that this is what we're on, this is the direction that we're going, and people tend to pay attention, and we tend to attract things into our life. We tend to attract people into our life. And so sometimes it's not necessarily seeking out a mentor. Sometimes it's, maybe I should change this to attract mentors based on what we're demonstrating. And I sincerely believe that whatever we demonstrate in life, we're going to attract uh, certain things to complement it, whether it's positive or negative. So yeah, so those are the 9 bullet points for the lifestyle when it comes to the habits of a rock star developer, right? And those are the most bullet points within that bucket. We have 2 other buckets. We have engineering and coding. When it comes to engineering and the habits that make a rock star developer, well, the first bullet is test the software without having to launch the actual application. And you know, majority of developers, they don't get it, man. Like they don't understand. Majority of developers, well, one, they don't know how to. Somehow they're deemed professional developers, but they don't know how to test their own software. They don't know how to programmatically prove that their code works. And maybe that's a strong statement, but they don't know how to programmatically um, they don't know how to programmatically test their code. Hold up for 1 second, sweetheart. I gotta call you back. I'm recording a YouTube video. So all right, you can listen in, but I got like probably 5 more minutes. So all right, peace. Let me go back. So when it comes to what was I talking about? The majority of professional developers, they they don't know how to test their application programmatically. And so, and this is a great interview question, is, and I usually do this when I have a tribunal of engineers and managers interviewing me for a company. I ask the question, well, they say, Scott, do you have any questions for us? And I say, I sure do. And I say, how do your engineers, how do you guys prove that your code works? How do you prove that your software works? And it's usually a hesitation, a deep sigh, and they say, um, we have a QA department. And they failed the interview, right? Or sometimes they say, oh, we have code reviews, right? They failed the interview. Rockstar developers, they don't have to launch an entire system to test the latest business requirements that they implemented. They don't have to do that. Okay. Rockstar developers, they develop the skill to isolate a section of the software to test programmatically via automated tests. Okay. That's what rock stars do. Now, your mediocre developers, they don't have that skill set. So they have to launch an entire Xamarin application, put the application into a specific state by filling out some fields, clicking the next button, uh, selecting an item within a list view, and typing in some more characters and some other text fields, then clicking another button, and then finally having the opportunity to go through the debugger and go line through line and hover the mouse over specific values, leveraging the data tip, and say, damn it, this isn't the value I was looking for. And then they kill the application in the debugger, edit the text or edit the code, and they launch the entire application again. And they go through all these steps of putting that user interface into a state where they can, again, within their integrated development environment, step through the debugger and use the mouse and hover over some values and observe the data tips. Like, that's not what a rockstar developer does. But that's what the majority of developers do. They're mediocre. Anyway, So that was test software without having to launch the actual application. I have number 2, relies on automated tests to supervise the construction of software. Okay. So we're in the engineering, right? And so Rockstar developers, they, even if it's functional programming, right? Definitely object-oriented programming, but even if it's functional programming, there's going to be some automated tests, right? Rockstar developers, they rely on automated tests to serve as an automated checklist to guide the development or the construction of the systems that they're building. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that they rely on an automated checklist to serve as a very tight feedback loop to notify them of breaking changes as they continue to extend and grow or evolve the software. That's what Rockstar developers do. They don't blindly write code and cross their fingers and hope that there's not some type of cascading, side effects that break existing functionality. And the only way that they can find that out is by manually testing or launching the entire application and putting the application into a specific state and then stepping through the debugger and using their mouse and hovering. No, like Rockstar developers, they're mature and they get it, right? And they realize that the majority of the software development life cycle is not really extending code, but really debugging it. And so when they realize that the majority of the cost, the consumption of a client's budget is troubleshooting and debugging, then we want to mitigate that. We want to reduce the time that we take to troubleshoot by, well, automating that so that we get notified as soon as we break something. And because, well, it just worked like literally a couple minutes ago, we know exactly what we did within the past 120 seconds to revert our changes so that things are passing again. Our automated checklist is happy and green. So yeah, Rockstar developers, they rely on automated tests to supervise the construction of how they build systems. Number 3, under the engineering category of what makes a Rockstar developer is, well, Rockstar developers, they automate everything. If something is just repeated over and over again, and it's very manual, but it gets repeated manually, like just way too many times, and it's time consuming, Rockstar developers, they say, man, you know what? I'm tired of doing this. Like, I'm just going to automate this. And, well, they want to automate everything. They want to press a button and have confidence that things just work. And that's the whole point of software. You press a button and the problem gets solved. The solution gets provided, right? We have answers. That's the whole point. And so the whole point of being a software developer is to automate, right? Not just a customer or a client's problems. You automate a solution to it, but you automate the testing to validate that you are building the right thing, right? You automate everything. I worked at a shop where they had this manual deployment process where you had to fill out like this Word document, and you had to basically identify the various DLLs that you made modifications to and any new DLLs that you created. And you had to basically identify those DLLs that are new or that you created or that were modified, And you also had to identify the files that you modified or added, and the methods. And so like I went ahead and automated the whole generation of that document for deployment so that the sysadmins can just take that auto-generated document and just read through it and deploy the latest version of the application. Why did I do it? Because I got tired of manually constructing a Word document. And it was just tedious. It was taking me like 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes every single time I wanted to deploy some new bits to production. It was taking 20 minutes. And I did some research on, the Microsoft Office API, specifically the Word API. And I created a Word document that was essentially a template. And each time I needed to deploy some new bits or deploy a new version of the software, I had separate software that I constructed or built where I just hit a deploy button, and it would just go into the bin debug directory or bin release directory of that code base, and it would basically compare the timestamps of the DLLs compared to the last version, and anything that looked new, it would just automatically take and fill out that report and generate that Word document and automatically email that Word document to the sysadmins for deployment. Okay. Why am I saying all this? Rockstar engineers, they automate everything, right? Anything that's error prone, automate that. You know what I mean? So yeah, so that's number 3 for the engineering category of what Rockstar engineers do. The next category is coding, okay? For coding, and this is what Rockstar engineers do. One, they avoid the mouse. So what does that mean? The mouse is time consuming. Like when you're in your IDE or integrated development environment, such as Visual Studio or Java Eclipse, and you're using the mouse to select the file menu, and you're using the mouse to right click on a certain piece of code, and you use the menu or the context menu for that, and like that stuff is time consuming. It's a lot more productive and faster to accomplish certain tasks or objectives. And so I remember I locked myself into my bedroom, and for a weekend, I basically tried my hardest to perform just routine tasks of building or writing programs with the minimal use of the mouse. So I was forced to memorize the shortcuts, the keyboard shortcuts for building or compiling the solution, the keyboard shortcuts for renaming a method or renaming a variable, the keyboard shortcuts for analyzing the code, for getting code coverage, for getting code metrics, for running automated tests. Like I learned the keyboard shortcuts for probably 80% of the routine things that I do when I'm writing code, when I'm building software. And I'm a lot faster, right? And what's crazy is when you do that and you job hop and you go into these shops and they're like hovering over your shoulder, or you're pair programming, like they get pretty impressed. They're like, yo, this guy knows his stuff. Yo, this guy is advanced. Like, how is he doing all these actions all at once? He's pretty nifty. Like, you start impressing people. What's annoying is when you're working with people and they have this heavy reliance on the mouse, and it's taking them forever to do everything. Like, they're using the mouse to run automated tests. They're using the mouse to compile their code. And you're like, why is it taking you 5 seconds to do this when it really just takes like half a second? So I don't know. This is what rock stars do. What else? I said avoid the mouse, avoid variables. This probably can be removed, but I think a mature developer, they're going to usually they're only going to have variables when they write loop statements, okay, or loop constructs. So for example, for I equals 0, I is less than 10, I plus plus, okay. Or they're within a loop construct, they're incrementing a index. Like, that stuff makes sense when it comes to the usage of variables. But if you have a variable, that means that, well, I think the definition of a variable is the value changes on it. And if the value is going to change, then why are we using the same name? If the value changes, then it's changing for a reason. And if it's changing for a reason, then we should represent that value for the reason why it changed. Or translate it, we should provide a name that fits for the reason of that value being updated. So this is kind of a FP, or functional programming concept, where no, if we don't need variables, we need to understand the different states of a system, and or of a component, or of a business rule. You know, I'm struggling to really like articulate this, but don't use variables. Have values, and each value is going to represent something that happened in the system, and it shouldn't change at all. And if you need to change it, then you need to create a new value that reflects what just happened in the system. And yeah, maybe that sounds better. Okay. So that was avoid variables. That's what Rockstar developers do. Avoids third-party libraries, right? So what I mean by this is, I think a mature developer recognizes that third-party libraries have the potential to take your code base hostage. They have the potential of dictating, once they get inside your code base, they have the potential of dictating how code gets written. And so an example of this is how some third-party libraries, they kind of make you jump through hoops when it comes to writing automated tests. They have some dependencies, or they rely heavily on mutable properties that what may be sound or good programming practices, your third-party libraries, they don't respect it. And so as a result, something such as like immutable values, sometimes you're not going to be able to use that in harmony with these third-party libraries. And so that's what I mean is, like, avoid third-party libraries. they may have their use outside of the actual business domain, such as the user interface or the data access layer. But when it comes to domain rules, like, don't sprinkle that stuff in there. Like, you start losing control, and that's essentially what I mean. Is when you start relying on third-party libraries within your business logic, aka your business domain, then you're giving up control, and now you have this third-party library. It's calling the shots, and it's dictating how your business logic is going to be written, right? And like a lot of developers, man, they don't get that. They just arbitrarily want to pull in everything. And I hear that this is very ubiquitous within like the JavaScript um, umbrella or the JavaScript space. And like, I just don't do that. Seriously, like, you do that at the edges of your domain system, but you don't do that in your business logic. Anyway, so that was avoid third-party libraries. I should put in within parentheses within domain, right? Within domain logic. Next, I have continuously improves the code base. So, like Robert C. Martin, he always talks about the Boy Scout rule, where you leave your place cleaner than when you first found it, and that makes sense. Over time, if you or everybody consistently every single day does a little bit of cleanup and makes the code better than it was yesterday, there's going to be a lot less technical debt. Things are going to be Your code is going to be a lot more legible. The code base is just going to evolve it's going to evolve instead of degrade. And this is something that just should be obvious, that if you see an opportunity to clean things up that doesn't take a huge amount of time, just do it. That's what rock stars do. Number 5, under the coding category of rockstar developer habits, they harness the type system to make illegal states unrepresentable. What does that mean? Harness the type system to make illegal states unrepresentable. Oh. What that means is that rockstar developers, they don't view a first name and a last name as string types. They don't view age as an integer. Okay. I'll leave it alone at those examples. They don't view a social security number as an integer either. They don't view email as a string, right? Rockstar developers, they learn how to harness the compiler. They learn how to harness the type system of a statically typed language, such that they're able to reduce the amount of errors that could occur at runtime by establishing at compile time issues that could come up, meaning that a first name isn't a string when a rockstar developer is declaring a first name. A first name is of type first name, and the age is not an integer. Age is of type age, and when you construct an age value, you pass in an unsigned integer, aka uint, because the age can't be negative, right? So rockstar developers, they tend to focus on leveraging the type system and leveraging that compiler to try their hardest to make illegal states unrepresentable, as long as it doesn't have diminishing returns. So you could read up on functional programming, and you can Google illegal states unrepresentable, and to obtain a cleaner understanding than what I attempted to articulate. What else do Rockstar developers do when it comes to coding? Well, Rockstar developers, they rely on linters, right? In Visual Studio, I think we call these code analyzers. Rockstar developers, and I don't really see this at a lot of shops. At a lot of shops, I don't see this. I see a lot of unused import statements or using statements where like they have these using statements, but none of the code actually has none of the code relies on it, right? So these import statements or using statements, they're just distracting. You know, they're lying about the dependencies of that file. When you use linters or code analyzers, like they make this known, like, hey, you don't need this. This isn't required. You're not using this anywhere within your file. Linters will tell you, hey, you don't need to declare the type 2 times within this declaration, like, because then if you need to modify the type, you have to modify 2 different places, like everywhere that this shows up. So why don't you just use a var instead? Linters will basically say, hey, you know, you never disposed of this object that implements iDisposable. I think you should wrap this in a using construct, right? Because you're not disposing it anywhere. Like linters basically are like your automated bots that pair programs with you. Okay, it's like a bot that pair programs with you, where as soon as you do something, it automatically says, hey, this right here, you should reconsider how you just wrote that code. So Rockstar developers, like, they recognize that. Within Visual Studio, there's in C#, there's some Visual Studio extensions. One is called Code Cracker, and the other one is called C# Refactoring Essentials. And those are some examples of some code analyzers that basically scream at you when there's opportunities to improve the code that you recently wrote. So that was number 6 under the coding category. And for number 7, relies on external IDE tools. And I kind of just touched on that. So for example, I talked about code analyzers such as Code Cracker and C# Refactoring Essentials. There's also a Visual Studio extension that I like when I'm doing object-oriented programming with C# called, I think it's called like nest files or nested files. It's basically a Visual Studio extension where instead of using regions, which I can't stand, you know, regions within C# code, I can use partial classes. So I'll have a number of files, a list of files within my Solution Explorer. And I'll basically, for each of those files, you know, I'll make the class declarations that of partial classes. And so I'll have a partial class that just exposes the private methods and the member variables of that class. And I'll have another partial class that exposes the public methods and public properties of that class. And so I kind of have layers of abstraction when it comes to the class. You know, it's kind of like the anatomy of a body. You know, you have the skin, and then you have the muscle, and then you have the skeleton. So those are the layers of the body. Well, classes can have layers as well. They can have what's exposed publicly, what are implementation details, aka private, and yeah, there's Visual Studio extensions such as file nesting that can help out with that. So that's what Rockstar developers do. And well, that's my list. That is Scott Nimrod's, aka Bizmonger's 19 Habits of a Rockstar Developer. And I'm going to take this, and I think I already put this on my my blog. Yeah, it's already here, and I'm gonna take this video that I'm doing. Where's the video at? I guess I got to publish this video first, but I can stop sharing, and I am going to take the contents of this blog. Or let me start over. I'm going to take the contents of this video, or I'm going to take this video, and I'm going to embed it within my blog post, and that's it. So I don't know. I know that a lot of the items that I mentioned are going to be debated, but that's fine. You could come up with your own habits of what makes a rockstar developer. But this is what I found, and I hope that some people find this useful if they really want to level up their skills and make more money. And I just want to help. That's what I want to do. I want to help you make more money. I want to help you help other developers. I want you to help customers that want to save money or want to make money to help others be more productive and solve their problems. So this is me giving back, and I dedicate this to Dennis Omler. And if it weren't for you being my mentor, I don't know where I would be. So thank you. All right, that's it. I'm Scott Nimrod. I'm available for hire. I do test automation. I do mobile development. I do desktop development. I do development coaching. I'm out here in Miami, Florida by means of Cleveland, Ohio. And yeah, that's it. So I'm available. Look me up. And I'm on Twitter. And I haven't done a podcast show in a while. I'll probably do a podcast show soon. And take care. Adios. Peace. Stop broadcast.